بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولي والفخر محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه ثم أما بعد. So alhamdulillah, we're continuing to study the fiqh of Imam Dar al-Hijra, Imam Malik ibn Anas رضي الله عنه, via the book Tadrib Al-Salik إلى قراءة أقرب المسالك في مذهب الإمام مالك رضي الله عنه. And we have reached the chapter dealing with ritual slaughter or zakat. And this chapter came right after the chapter about Hajj and Udhiyah, and usually that's quite normal because they're similar subjects. So when we talked about Hajj, we talked about Al-Hadi, and we talked about the sacrifice of an animal as part of Hajj, and then Udhiyah, which would be the sacrifice of an animal for those who are commemorating Eid on the same day. And now we have reached Bab al-Zakat, which tells us how to properly, or what are the conditions for properly slaughtering an animal, and what types of animals and what types of methods of slaughter can be used. So he says, Bab fi zakat. So this is a chapter dealing with zakat and tuzakki, which means to slaughter. الزكاة هي السبب لحل أكل الحيوان البري وأنواعها أربعة. So he says that zakat, or ritual slaughter, is the sabab. Here he means the legal reason that makes something halal to eat. And what we know about legal reasons is if you don't have the legal reason present, then the ruling is not present. So if you don't have the slaughter present, then you can't eat that animal. And he's going to tell us what types of animals. لحلي, to make halal, أكل الحيوان, eating an animal, البري, a land animal. So we also gather from this that animals in the sea do not require zakat. And this is the ruling in the Maliki school. So any animal that lives most or in its entire life in the sea, which includes all types of fish, whales, sharks, crustaceans, so crab, lobster, all of those things, if they are living in the sea, they do not require zakat to be halal to eat. وأنواعها أربعة. So literal slaughter of land animals is of 4 types. الأول, the first, ذبح. So the first he calls ذبح, and it does mean slaughter as well, but here specifically it's going to mean slaughtering in a particular manner that he's going to describe, which he says وهو قطع مميز مسلم أو كتابي للحلقوم والوجين بنيتها مع ذكر الله والنسيان مغتفر بمحدد من غير طول فصل ولا بأس بذبح أنثى. So this is a type of what we call a tarif, and he's giving what's called something that is comprehensive, so that all of the particular cases will fit into this, and all of the particular cases that do not fit. So he says الذبح, which is a slaughter, هو قطع, and it is the cutting of a Muslim who is mumayyiz. And mumayyiz means not pubescent, but could be prepubescent, but of the age where they are discerning. And generally we say this is about 7 or 8 years of age, beginning with 7 years of age. Then we can say that they are discerning. So a young boy or even a young girl, as he says here, can do the slaughter. أو كتابيا, or from أهل الكتاب, someone who is a Jew or Christian also. So it could be a Muslim or a kitabi, or Jew or Christian. للحلقوم والودجين. So the hulqum is the windpipe or the larynx, or the pipe that which you breathe from, or an animal breathes from. So cutting off oxygen to the lungs. والوجين, and the wajjain are the jugular veins that supply blood to the from the heart to the brain. So they're on either side of the throat, and you have the hulqum, and you have the esophagus or larynx in the middle. And if you've ever done it, the esophagus is kind of, in a sheep anyway, it's circular, it's probably not that big in diameter, and it's white. And so for a proper ritual slaughter to occur, the knife has to cut deep enough that you're cutting both jugular veins and you're severing them, and you're also cutting the hulqum, or you're cutting the esophagus. It sounds difficult and it sounds like much to think about, but for someone who is properly trained and knows how to do it, it's not all that difficult. The Shafi'i method, I believe, also adds a fourth component to that, and that you also have to do the food pipe. I don't know the proper biological term for that. Also should be cut. This is the Shafi'i school. This is not a stipulation in the Maliki school. So you only have to do the jugular vein and the, or is it the esophagus, I think, is the food pipe. So the jugular veins and the windpipe. So that which supplies oxygen to the lungs and that which supplies blood from the heart to the brain, those have to be cut completely. مع ذكر الله. مع ذكر الله. Also remembering the name of Allah, which is saying Bismillahumma or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالنِّسْيَانُ مُغْتَفَرْ. If you forget to say it, he says it's مُغْتَفَرْ, which means it's forgiven. So forgetting to say it is forgiven, obviously, for a Muslim. بِمُحَدَّدٍ مِنْ غَيْرِ طُولِ فَصْلٍ. With something that's a sharp instrument, so generally a knife, but anything sharp enough to do that. مِنْ غَيْرِ طُولِ فَصْلٍ. But without taking a long interruption. So what that means is, when the knife is placed on the throat of the animal, in this case a goat or a sheep, and you cut, and then you lift the knife, and you have not cut the two jugular veins completely, or you haven't cut the windpipe completely, you are allowed to go back and finish the job, but without طول فصل. طول فصل means not without a long interruption. There is a case, they said Imam al-Hattab, he gave a fatwa that they were once slaughtering a cow, a large one, a bull, and it got up and ran away, and they didn't finish it. And it ran like 300 yards till they caught it again, and then they finished it. So that they say that's what the طول فصل is, something like that, you know, a time where an animal could run away. And so that's rare to happen, that the animal get up and run away, especially if it's a sheep or a goat. But generally, it should be done in a way that you are cutting on one swipe, not multiple swipes. One swipe, and you're cutting the jugular veins and the windpipe, the larynx. The esophagus, which is the food pipe, as I said, you don't have to, but even though it's mentioned in the Shafi'i school. And that is the way that you would do it for sheep and goats and cows. What's called al-dhabah. الثاني, the second way to do it, or the second method, نحر الإبل وهو طعن بلبة. So camels and other long-necked animals, you can't slaughter them in that way. They have a long neck, and so if you were to cut them above right where the head is at the throat, it wouldn't be feasible to do that. So they have something called a nahar, which is actually to stab the animal, usually while standing and one leg tied, so it doesn't run away. And this is a camel, which is a strong animal. And to take the point of the knife, the blade, and get it what's called in the labba, which would be for the camel where its neck meets its chest, kind of that open, that pocket in here, which you can feel in yourself, a stab right there. And that usually kills the animal instantly. وَيُجْزِئُ فِي الْبَقَرِ مَعَ الْقَرَاهَةِ. So this method, an-nahar, to stab in the collarbone, neck area, is permissible in cows, but it is disliked. It's makruh. It's not the optimum way. The optimum way is dhabah, like you would do for sheep and goats. وَجَازَ مَعَ التَّعَثُّرِ نَحْرُ مَا يُذْبَحُ وَالْعَكْسِ. And it is permissible مَعَ التَّعَذُّرِ, which means if for whatever reason you're unable to do the dhakat, which is cutting the throat and the jugular veins and the windpipe for the cow and the sheep and the goat, to do the opposite if it is impossible to do it the other way. But generally speaking, he put this in here, but I'm not aware of how that actually would be, that scenario would be conceptualized. So with sheep and goats, you have to cut the throat and cut the wajdain, the jugular veins, and the larynx or the windpipe. And with camels and other long-necked animals, maybe like a llama, you would have to stab it in the collarbone area. And obviously, that would take someone who's trained. You wouldn't kind of try to do it the first time on your own and say, let me see if I can do this. That would be inhumane and unethical, I think. So those are the first two types. الثالث عقر الوحش أصالة. So the aqr is actually another word to say an animal, a wild animal that is hunted. So the aqru al-wahshi, which means wild animal, asalatan. In other words, it's always been a wild animal. وإن توحش بعد تأنس بمحدد والحق به بندق الرصاص أو بجرح من معلم من كلب أو طير أرسله من يد بنية. So عقر الوحشي أصالة is an animal that is normally lives in the wild, like a deer, like wild buffalo, like bison, something like that. You know, it's not a domesticated animal. It's not normally domesticated. Then in this sense, you have the permission to hunt it, right? And he's going to talk about what you hunt it with in a second. وإن توحش بعد تأنس. So here it's not clear, but in توحش بعد تأنس, which means if it becomes wild after it was originally domesticated, in other words, the same animal, not the species itself, but if you had a sheep or a goat and it got away and it ran up in the mountains and you're unable to get it and capture it, the mashhur of the madhab is you're not allowed to hunt it that way. You have to capture it first and then do the dabah. You can't hunt it with a bow and arrow or with a shotgun or something like that to hunt it. However, if you do injure it with something and it's immobile and then you do the cat and then you do the slaughter of it, then this would be permissible. But not to hunt it or kill it by the methods he's going to describe here. So bimuhaddad means something sharp. So that could be generally, in their time, they're talking about bows and arrows, an arrow, a sharp arrow. وَأُلْحَقَ بِهِ, but also included in this, بُنْدُقْ الرِّصَاص. So any firearm that fires bullets, and I would say probably shotgun pellets too, if they're large enough, to obviously pierce the animal and pierce and cut in the same way and kill in the same way that a bow and arrow would. So that would include rifles and long guns in general. أو بجرح من معلم, or من كلب أو طير. So, or you have a trained hunting animal, and he mentions two types here, either a hunting dog or a hunting bird, and usually the hunting bird, and this is especially in the Arabian Gulf, you find this, the falcon. So the falcon can be trained to go and hunt small prey, like rabbits and other small animals that are halal to eat. So a rabbit can be hunted because a rabbit is generally not a domesticated rabbit, but a wild rabbit. Or a dog as well. So the dog can go and hunt a wild duck or a turkey or something like that. ولكن معلم. معلم means, like the Quran mentions, that you have taught it, it's trained. Not that the dog went and killed it by itself without instruction from its trainer or its owner. That's where he says here, أرسله من يد بنية. So it has to have been sent by the owner. So if I'm walking with my hunting dog and all of a sudden it takes off and runs and goes after a goose, a wild goose chase, no pun intended, but he went and caught the goose and killed it, but without my instruction, without me telling him I want, go, and I gave him instruction to go kill that goose, I can't eat the goose. If he kills the goose. If he injures the goose, as we said, and it's still alive, and if I were to leave it, it would still live, so it's not a life-threatening injury, then I could slaughter it by my hand. Otherwise, if I send the falcon or I send the hunting dog, and they go and kill the goose by themselves, then it's halal to eat, because it was by my instruction, by my hand. That's where he says here, بِشَرْطِ الْعِلْمِ بِإِبَاحَةِ الْمَصِيدِ وتدميته وعدم اشتغاله بغيره وألا يحصل شك في موته أمن من المرسل أو غيره كوقوعه في الماء بعد الجرح وكمشاركة غير مستكمل الشروط. So here he's outlining some of the scenarios where it would not be halal, because unlike slaughtering an animal, when you hunt an animal, you don't just hit it with your arrow or with your rifle, or the dog and goes and hunts it and then you find it immediately. You have to actually go search for the quarry. You have to go look for it and maybe find a blood trail because it may run after. So he said the condition بشرط العلم بإباحة المصيد. One, you're looking at this animal from far away. So you have to have intended that I am hunting this animal and it's permissible to eat. Not that I was hunting something else because it was, let's say you own a farm and you have wild coyotes around your farm, and the authorities stipulated that it's okay to dispense with them because they're attacking your flock. And so you have a shotgun or you have a rifle and you take aim at the coyote and you kill it, and then you go up to it and it turns out it wasn't a coyote, it was a deer. Can you eat that deer? No, you cannot. Because when you shot at it and when you're hunting it, you didn't think it was a deer. You didn't think it was something that was, what he says here, إباحة المصيد. شرط العلم بإباحة المصيد means on the condition that you believe the thing that you're shooting at or the thing you sent your animal after is halal to eat. وتدميته, right, and it has to bleed out. وعدم اشتغاله بغيره. This is referring to the hunting dog or the falcon. So let's say you see the deer or you see the rabbit and it's running, and then you send your falcon after it or you send your dog and then it goes after it, but then it actually doesn't go after that rabbit, it goes after another rabbit. Then that wouldn't be halal. That's عدم اشتغاله بغيره, right, because it wasn't the one that you intended. وألا يحصل شك في موته أمن المرسل أو غيره. Or you and your friend are both hunting in this scenario, and you sent your animal off after that wild turkey, and so did he, and you're not sure which of it was your falcon or his dog that killed the turkey. So there's a shak about what killed it. Or you sent your falcon or your dog after it, and later you find the animal dead, but you're not sure it was your animal that did that or did another animal come and do that to it because of the time lapse perhaps. So any type of shak, right, any type of doubt about what killed it, if it was your animal or something else, then that's not halal to eat. He gives another example, كَوُقُوعِهِ فِي الْمَاءِ بَعْدَ الْجُرْحِ, right, like if you shot at it or you sent your animal after it and then it fell in a pond or a lake and then you find it dead. So did it die from the injury it received or did it die from drowning? So there's a shak here. If it died from drowning, it's not halal to eat. So in this case, because of the doubt, you would not be able to eat from it. أو مشاركة غير مستكمل الشروط. Or, like we said in the earlier scenario, you have someone else with you who doesn't have all of those conditions, and they sent their animal, they didn't know what it was, or the animal's not properly trained, and they kind of participated with your animal in getting the prey, then, or the hunted animal. Then in this case, also not acceptable. فإذا اختل شرط لم يؤكل إلا إن وجده غير منفوذ المقتل فذكاه. So this is important too. فإذا اختل شرطا لم يؤكل. So as we mentioned earlier, if one of these conditions is not met, however, you get to the animal, right? So either you thought it was a coyote and it turned out to be a deer, or you sent your hunting dog after it, but it caught something else. But if you get to the animal, that's why one of the conditions also I didn't mention here, but one of the adab is you have to hurry up and don't wait a long time. You have to go after it immediately. So if you get there and you find that it's injured, غير منفوذ المقتل, right? غير منفوذ المقتل means, but not with a life-threatening injury. In other words, the animal could probably recover from it. So not something that, pierced a life-threatening organ. So you didn't, when you shot it with your rifle or with your bow and arrow, you didn't get it through the heart. You injured its leg, for example, and rendered it kind of immobile, but it's still alive. And it'll probably live with that, but it'll live limp. In this case, that's why it's important to have something with you, like a sharp knife, a hunting knife, that you can slaughter the animal need be if you get close enough. So he says in this case, if you find it in this condition and then you slaughter it, then it becomes halal to eat, even though you injured it in a manner that was not completing of the conditions that we mentioned earlier for ritual hunting, for the conditions for a hunting animal or a hunting weapon. وَالْمَقَاتِلُ مَحَلُّ الذَّكَاةِ. So when he mentions here, what are the muqatil? What is a life-threatening injury? مَحَلُّ الذَّكَاة. So like any of its, if it's windpipe, it's jugular vein. If your dog grabbed it by the throat and cut its jugular vein, then that's manfudh al-maqtal. It would die from that. So you can't do ritual slaughter, even if you slaughter it before it actually dies. This is an important point. So in the Maliki school, if it's already had one of its maqatil, which he says here, which include mahal al-zakat, so jugular vein, windpipe, qata al-nukha', right, which a severe brain injury, nathru al-dimagh wal-hashwa, or you find brain come out of already, or al-hashwa, or intestinal injury to the degree that it's been ripped out, or thaqb al-musrani, the intestines, or qat'uha, so if they've been pierced, or the animal that you sent, ripped out its intestines already. All these things, it wouldn't survive with that. But if it's still alive, even if you slaughter it in that way, it's not halal to eat. This is the Maliki school that says that. Other schools may say different, especially the Shafi'i school. But the Maliki school says you have to find it in a condition that it would not die from, if you did not complete the conditions as we mentioned earlier. وما أُيَسَ من حياته لمرض تعمل فيه الذكاة إن شخب الدم أو تحرك كقبض يد مع مدها. And if you have an animal that's terminally ill, or it looks like it's going to die, but it's not dying quite yet, the zakat works. You can slaughter it. إن شخب الدم أو تحرك, as long as the blood flows, right? So it's not so sick that even it barely has a pulse and the blood doesn't flow when you slaughter it. So if the blood is flowing, it's moving, then كقبض يد مع مدها, right? Or it's still moving, the nerve twitching afterwards is still life in it. And when you slaughter it, then that means you can eat it. Otherwise, if it's already almost dead and then you slaughter it and you don't see a difference in its condition by slaughtering, then there's a doubt about that, so you shouldn't eat it. وفي غير المريضة يكفي السيلان. And in an animal that's healthy, that's not sick, it's enough that the blood flows. So in the first condition, in the first one, if it's a sick animal, شخب الدم, there's blood, or تحرك, or the animal is moving, right? Then in that case, it's enough for if it's a sick animal, but the blood has to flow freely and completely if it's a healthy animal. A sayalan, which is more than just شغب. وذكاة الجنين ذكاة أمه فيؤكل إن تم خلقه ونبت شعره فإن خرج حيا افتقر لذكاة إلا أن يبادره الموت. If you slaughter an animal that was pregnant, then the slaughter of the mother is enough for the janeen, or for the baby inside the mother of the cow or the sheep or the goat to be eaten. فَيُؤْكَلُ إِن تَمَّ خَلْقُهُ, right? So it's to be eaten if it is completely formed, right? Like it's almost at the end of the period of the gestation to be born. وَنَبَتَ شَعْرُهُ, and one of the signs of that is that if it has the hair on its body already. فَإِنْ خَرَجَ حَيًّا, however, if you cut open the stomach and then the animal comes out alive, then you can't eat it. افتقر لذكاة, then it has to be slaughtered. إلا أن يبادره الموت, except if it kind of comes out and dies instantly, that's different. But if it comes out and it's living and it's running around, you can keep it and let it grow. Or if you want to eat it, you have to do zakat. And one thing I should point out here, it sounds a little bit harsh and rough, and he's not saying that you slaughter a pregnant animal, but he's saying if you do happen to do that, then this is what needs to be done. generally from the adab and the etiquettes, we wouldn't slaughter a pregnant animal. We would slaughter animals that have been specifically raised for that purpose. And even from kind of a very a monetary financial perspective, it doesn't make sense that you slaughter a pregnant animal because you're going to have another animal that comes out of it. So I haven't come across any sort of slaughterhouse Muslims that seek out pregnant animals to slaughter to eat the baby. So remember, this is a manual of fiqh, of law, so it's telling us if this scenario comes about, this is what we do. So those are the three ways of eating something, of it being halal. And then the fourth we kind of mentioned already in passing. الرابع ما يموت من كل بري لا نفس له سائلة كالجراد ولو بقطع رجل أو إلقاء في النار. And the fourth type is all those animals that don't have a proper, what he says here, لا نفس له سائلة. I would translate as circulatory system. So not a mammal. And this would include jarad, which are beetles, or all insects. So حتى لو بقطع رجل أو إلقاء في النار. Right? And whichever way that you slaughter it, it's fine. If it's an insect or it's an animal that's not a mammal that has a circulatory system and blood flow. ولا يحل ما ذبحه الكتابي مما لا يحل له بشرعنا من ذي الظفر كالإبل والأوز وما تقرب به لغير الله ولا ما لم يحضره مسلم في مستحل الميتة. So here he's citing some conditions of what the non-Muslim can slaughter, al-kitabi. So in the Maliki school, we can't eat anything that wouldn't be normally halal in their sharia. So in the ancient sharia of some of the Jews and the Christians, they couldn't eat animals that were hooved, so like a camel or a goose, and that which they also is not to be eaten, that which they make an intention للتقرب إلى غير الله. So if they when باب أولى لو بالاسم, so if they say in the name of the Son and the Holy Ghost when they are slaughtering the animal, then we can't eat that animal. Or if they slaughtered the animal, not saying that, but they had intended it as, let's say, an animal to be sacrificed for a feast like Christmas or like Easter, or something that's other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in this case we're not supposed to eat it either. وَمَا لَمْ يَحْضُرْهُ مُسْلِمٌ فِي مُسْتَحِلِّ الْمَيْتَةِ. And also they added the condition that for the kitabi, we should be able to, they slaughter in front of us if they're doing it on our behalf. So if they're slaughtering for us, something for us to eat, specifically for us, then we should see them slaughter it. Versus if they're slaughtering in general and they're selling the meat, then these other conditions apply. So they have to do it in the way that we do it, and that's not supposed to be something that's haram in their sharia. And also, they can't mention something other than Allah's name upon it, or intend other than Allah's name. So for these reasons, we're fairly comfortable in saying that most packaged meat that you can buy in any supermarket in non-Muslim countries, it would be safer to stay away from that, because we have no idea if any of these conditions are being met. And oftentimes they don't actually slaughter. Often they kill them in other ways. And so, due to the continued doubt that we have about it, especially with something like this, it's better just to stick to a halal butcher or that which you're sure about its source. ويشترط في الأنواع أربعة نية الزكاة وذكر الله إلا لنسيان ولا تشترط تسمية من الكتاب والله أعلم. And it is a condition for the four types, نية الزكاة, right, that we have the intention of slaughter, even if it's insects, whichever way we kill it, but we have the intention that we're doing it to eat it. وذكر الله, and also to say Bismillah, except if you forget. ولا تشترط التسمية من الكتاب والله أعلم. And it is not a condition for the kitabi, the non-Muslim, to say the name of Allah, but they shouldn't say the name of something else. So they shouldn't say in the name of Jesus, or in the name of Mary, or in the name of the Holy Ghost. If they do that, then that would render the zakat that they do unlawful for us. Wallahu a'lam. So we'll continue with the next chapter, which is closely related, about al-mubah. And this is just dealing with not just animals, but anything in general, that what is lawful to eat. يقول المصنف رحمه الله باب في المباح. So he says the permissible. So literally means the permissible, but here it's talking specifically about permissible animals to eat or permissible things to ingest. المباح كل طاهر غير مؤذن ولا مغيب للعقل. So he says here, anything that is pure, كل طاهر غير مؤذن, that is not harmful, ولا مغيب للعقل, and does not affect or is not mind altering. So mind altering here is talking about all sorts of drugs and obviously alcohol and anything that would put you in a sort of compromised mental state. All of those things would be haram. وغير مؤذن, right, and also not harmful. So like smoking of cigarettes would be included in the haram because it's harmful both to the person who is smoking and to the one who is around them. وَالْبَحْرِيُّ وَإِنْ مَيْتَ, and also that's halal, anything of the sea as we mentioned, وَإِنْ مَيْتَ, even if you find it dead or washed up on the beach but it lived in the ocean, then it's halal to eat. وَالطَّيْرُ وَلَوْ جَلَّالًا أَوْ ذَا مَخْلَبٍ, and all flying animals, even if it's a jallala. Jallala means something that eats like carrion. It's like, like a vulture that will pick, flesh from dead animals and things like that. But it's a bird, technically. So if you want to eat the vulture, be my guest. It's halal to eat. Doesn't mean you should eat it, but it is a bird. أو ذا مخلب, even if it has claws, or they don't say claws with falcons. They say whatever the word is for the thing that comes out. I don't remember the word for it. Makhlab, which a falcon has. وما لا يفترس من الوحشي قضب وأرنب. And also animals that may not necessarily be hunted, but you can eat them anyway, like lizards and rabbits, because rabbits can be domesticated. وكخشاش كحية أمن سمها, or things that crawl around on the ground like a snake, as long as you are safe from its sum, from its poison, right? Because then it would be mu'zi, then it would be harmful. So the garter snake, okay, king cobra, probably not, if you're into that. وما لا دم له يؤكل إن خالته طعام غالب فإن تميز أخرج إن كان ميتا والحي يؤكل بنية الذكاة. And as we said, ما لا دم له, those animals that don't have a circulatory system like insects, يؤكل إن خالته طعام غالب. And this is more like if it's accidental. So you're eating and then you saw that there were a few bugs in your food and you ate it anyway. لا بأس, right? There's nothing wrong with that because it doesn't have a circulatory system to begin with. فإن تميز أخرج إن كان ميتا. However, if you see it in your food and it's dead, right, because you didn't have the intention of the cat, as we mentioned earlier, of slaughter, even though it's, like a beetle, then you take it out of your food. Don't eat it. وَالْحَيُّ يُؤْكَلُ بِنِيَّةِ الذَّكَاةِ, right, and that which is still alive in your plate, then you can eat it while it's alive with the intention that you are slaughtering it at the same time that you're eating it. So if you're into eating worms and beetles and things like that and you have a whole bowl of it, then you can go ahead and live your life and eat it as long as you intend, okay, I'm slaughtering this thing while I'm eating it. It's alive. So I'm not sure if they saw the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. Anyway, it's just covering all the possibilities because different cultures have different different tastes and so forth. So some cultures, they may do that. So that's why these teachings are beautiful. We're laughing and we're making a joke, but in actuality, it's quite a beautiful thing. Alhamdulillah. والمكروه المفترس من الوحشي وأفتى كثير بحرمة الكلب ومثله الوطواط وفأر يصل إلى النجاسة. So makruh, and there's some khilaf here. المفترس من الوحشي. So carnivorous animals that are land animals like a bear, tiger, lion. One opinion is that it's makruh. it's disliked, another one that it's haram to eat those animals. وأفتى كثير بحرمة الكلب. And many Maliki muftis said that eating dogs is haram. ومثله الوطواط, and also bats. وفأر يصل إلى النجاسة, and rodents that can reach najasa, they eat najasa, like rats. Not that you want to really indulge in that, but والمحرم, and that which is haram without khilaf, without any dissent, الخنزير, so swine, pigs, any variant of the wild boars. والحمر الإنسية, and also domesticated donkeys. والبغال كالخيل في المشهور والطين والتراب للضرر, and also mules, horses, في المشهور. There's a little bit of difference between, but mules and horses, as well as domesticated donkeys, are all not halal to eat. والطين والتراب للضرر, and also eating clay, mud, and dirt للضرر, because there is darar, because there is harm in it. وللمضطر أكل الميتة فيشبع ويتزود. And so the one who is muttar, in other words, you're in a life-threatening situation, if you don't eat this thing that's normally haram, you will die. Then not only للمضطر, يعني it's not only permissible, it becomes obligatory. أكل الميتة, so to eat an animal that hasn't been properly slaughtered, like a dead animal that wasn't killed properly. فيشبع ويتزود, and you can eat from it until you are full and satiated. He mentions this here specifically because some other schools of law believe you should only eat what you need. Sadd al-ramaq, which is just to take the hunger pangs away. But the Maliki school says no, you can, once it becomes halal because you're in the situation, then you can eat from it and get satiated. وتقدم على ضالة الإبل, and this maytah, this animal not slaughtered properly, takes precedence over a runaway camel. Runaway camel means it belongs to somebody. It's not a wild camel. It belongs to somebody. So if you go and slaughter that, you took, the camel of somebody else illegally. So he says yuqaddam, yani it takes preference. If there's nothing but the runaway camel, then yes, you can take the runaway camel. Then you have to settle with the owner afterwards. وما لم يذبح من صيد المحرم. And also here, the exception is if you're in a state of ihram, you're in Hajj or Umrah, generally it's not allowed for you to slaughter an animal or to hunt anything. But if you're in the muttar state, right, like you don't have a choice, then you would slaughter or hunt something rather than eat a dead animal. That would take precedence over that. وما أمن العقوبة يقدم عليها طعام الغير. And if you have food from someone else, it's not yours, and you don't think that you'll get in a lot of trouble by eating it, then you're allowed to eat that before you eat the dead animal. وتجوز القهوة. Alhamdulillah. Coffee is permissible. And you're wondering, why is that in here? Well, centuries ago, there was a discussion about qahwa, and it used to be called khamr. And it used to even be called the wine of the Muslims. And they thought perhaps because it was mind-altering to a degree, but it's not. So qahwa is halal, bal huwa mustahab, hiya mustahabba. I think it's recommended in some of the ulama. They said if you do it with the intention of staying alert and awake for dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for studying or something like that, then it can even be the mustahab. وفي الدخان خلاف. He says that, but that's not true. This is an older book. Smoking, there is no khilaf. Smoking is haram. and he mentions ولا يبعد ترجيح الحرمة لما شوهد من مضرات والله أعلم. And it's not remote to say that it's haram because we see of all the madarrat, all of the darar, all of the things that are associated with it that are very harmful to those who smoke and those who are around people who smoke. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. So we're going to stop here, and then we have one last chapter left in this what's called Ruba al-Ibadat, in the quarter of acts of worship, which is al-Yamin wal-Nadhr, which are taking oaths and swearing by the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وبارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.